does get out, and so that no matter what was being planned, I don't think that will eventually lead, or that will be successful. So, my basic or simplest answer to that possibility that you were saying, is WikiLeaks part of an MK Ultra 9/11 false flag operation? Is that I don't think so. You look at the reaction against WikiLeaks, and I think looking at that reaction, I think it's the real deal, and it's caught kind of the elite off guard.
That's my gut feeling on it too. There might be a lot of other shenanigans, and I know there's there's going to be a lot of twists and spins and things of that nature going on there. But I look at the process that they do that with, and they start off by trying to dismiss it and just saying, oh, this is all nonsense. But they couldn't do that because, it's on file there, and people are going, wait a second, this is still on file, and this is real. And then they try to discredit the person, that's bringing the information out, and then they shift it into some kind of character assassination. It's usually sex with a younger woman or something, to the point where they even will set these people up with a girl that may be 17 years old but looks like she's 25, that'll end up in their hotel room and then scream rape or something. And that whole system's been going on for a long time, and I've watched it play out over and over again. And, it does look exactly like that's what they're doing in this case.
Exactly. I think, the whole kind of rape charges that have been leveled against Julian Assange, it's really peculiar that charges still haven't been filed. In Sweden, they simply want him for questioning at this stage, and they issued an Interpol warrant for his arrest because they just want to question him. Well, the man was available in Sweden for about a month after the incident and was happy to answer questions for the prosecution, and when he leaves the country, then they kind of issue this warrant. So, and I did hear that after the original charges were dropped, that a Swedish politician actually approached the prosecutor's office to reinvestigate and basically move forward. So there's definitely a political connection here.
Yeah, it seems to be the case every time. It's obvious he's getting special prosecution treatment because there are a lot of banksters over there that they could be going after. There's indictments against some of our past political leaders, and they're not touching any of those. They're dealing with that. But all of a sudden, as soon as this comes up, boy, they're all over it, and it's rushed right through, and the whole process seems to be streamlined.
Well, I think this is really going to ultimately be a tremendous embarrassment to Sweden, which has an incredible high kind of reputation on the international scene for fairness and justice and human rights and so forth. And I think what will eventually emerge is that these charges will be found to be spurious, and there'll be a backlash. Why did Swedish authorities pursue this man when it was so clear that these charges were kind of so flimsy, and that there was a political agenda behind them in the midst of this kind of major WikiLeaks release? I think it's a scandal, and I think ultimately the country of Sweden is going to come off looking kind of diminished and not quite the bastion of freedom it was or has been seen, but really to be kind of like secretly an American lackey. This is one of the secrets about Sweden as a country, that even though they have this kind of long-found independence, they do so by cooperating secretly with the US, so they cooperate in. When it comes to the UFO issue, for example, any UFOs or any kind of anomalous phenomena like that are immediately transferred to the Americans, and they come over and take over authority, and anything possessed by the Swedish military is simply turned over to the Americans. And then the Swedish authorities can turn around and say, well, we don't know anything about it, because, yeah, of course, they handed everything over to the Americans. This has been going on secretly for years and years. So, hopefully this will be one of the things that comes out as well, that countries like Sweden that, have this kind of really impeccable international reputation, it becomes clear that, in fact, that they have been secretly kind of in the pay or in the control of the American political system.
It seems that's the same way with a lot of South American countries, all these countries that have these amazing events. I was down in Mexico a while back, and they had a crash there. and all the people knew about it. And they brought in a big flatbed truck, and they picked up the saucer basically and took it out. I went and talked to a lot of the local people, and they go, "Oh yeah, we were there. They loaded it up, and you know." And I tried to get more information about, but they just totally acknowledged it was there, and they said they didn't get close to it. They just, the whole town knew about it, and some people saw the truck, and they saw the saucer going, you know, being pulled out of there and even loaded on the truck as well. So, but, you know, you never heard of it, but you did see it in their papers. They did cover it in their papers down there. But, you know, it was the American government that was down there picking this thing up and carting it off.
Exactly that. I mean, they have a worldwide system where once any UFO activity is observed anywhere in the world, or if there's a crash or anything like that, or a landing or a contact, the American authorities, or I should say really the secret government, the shadow government, they're alerted to it, you know, because, I mean, they have kind of real-time intelligence monitoring around the planet 24/7, and as soon as something anomalous like that is found, I mean, they send in their kind of retrieval teams, and the area is sanitized. And the kind of public and even the conventional military in the area are kind of, you know, they're kind of like trying to work out what's going on, because you have these elites, you know, like in that situation that you described in Mexico. I'm sure that you probably had Mexican local authorities scratching their heads, wondering, you know, well, what just happened? I mean, we saw this thing crash, and we went in, and all of a sudden these elite teams come in, and they're sanctioned by the highest levels of government in the military in Mexico, and they clean everything up and take it away, and it's like, well, don't talk about it. And so I think you have a lot of local authorities and local military people often kind of being left in the dark once these elite teams move in and sanitize an area.
Yeah, I think there's going to be just so much activity. Not so much crashes, but I think there's going to be so many ships in the air here in the really near future that they're not going to be able to deny it anymore and keep a straight face. Everybody is just going to start throwing tomatoes at them, basically. You know, because you know, the people right now, I guess somebody said there was an 86% or 80, a really high poll recently they took, might be another Times poll, where they said that, you know, the high 80% of the people know that UFOs are here and that there's a government cover-up.
Well, I mean, the interesting question has always been, how long can the government keep this up, in covering it up, if the UFOs themselves, or the extraterrestrials, decide to suddenly start appearing en masse over major population centers? And I mean, we had that in October of this year. You had a prediction that UFOs would appear over New York City, and it was a retired NORAD officer, Stanley Fulham. He made that prediction, and essentially it was one of the few times that I can remember where someone has made a prediction about UFOs appearing over a major city, a major urban area, and it was accurate, and it actually did show up. And what was even more interesting about the UFO showing up was that it actually led to the closure of 3 airports. A lot of people probably didn't hear about that. That the 3 major airports in New York City, that is LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark, that all of those closed for an hour just around the time that the UFO had appeared. And the radar facility in New York that controls all 3 major metropolitan areas, that's called Westbury, they actually evacuated the radar facility. That something happened in the radar facility, you know, during this UFO appearing. And the interesting thing was that they had to evacuate the radar facility, and of course the airports, you know, they had to delay or reschedule flights coming in and out because they had no radar.
Yeah, we didn't hear about that part. The only thing we heard about was it was a group of school kids that released some balloons for their teacher's birthday.
Well, that's right, and they released it around 1 o'clock that day. These were party balloons.
Yeah.
And that was the big problem with that, is that, you know, the UFOs were seen in the morning of that day. They were seen late in the afternoon, and there's no way that you'd have party balloons being released from Mount Vernon, which is about 20 miles, 25 miles away from Manhattan, floating from Mount Vernon to Manhattan, and then just kind of being stationary over Manhattan. The trade winds just don't work that way.
Yes, they forget. They forget about minor details on winter mechanics or whatever, or weather mechanics.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was that when you had UFOs appearing over the Hangzhou area in China in July of this year, you also had the radar being interfered with and the airport closing. So there you have another example of where you have airport closings around the time of a UFO sighting, and the radar facility goes offline. And this was one of the things that happened in China, and it happened in New York. So I think there are a lot of people very interested to see what happens with Stanley Fulham's next prediction that in early January of 2011, UFOs are going to appear over Moscow and London.
Now, there's two questions I have. One is not really a question; it's just a statement. But I looked at that report as far as the UFOs over New York, and it was coming in between 8 and 9 in the morning. And as you said, these balloons weren't released till 1 o'clock. But they've never covered that, or you never saw another headline that said, "Oh wait, the balloons were not the UFO because the reports came in at 8 or 9. You never hear that. You always see them leave it off on one of their totally lame explanations of what happened that never, fits reality. And, the other thing with Stan Fulham, I was looking at where he was getting, I think it's from a group called Transgenders. And one of the things that I always have a lot of caution with is that whenever I see grays involved in a group and they're saying that they're good or benevolent, I have a little red flag, as most people do that are in the field, that a big red flag goes up for them. And I was curious what you thought about that.
Oh, well, that's interesting, James. I know he has communication with these Transgenders. Now, I know I haven't read his books. I'm not quite sure exactly how many ET groups are involved, but as far as I knew, he referred to the Transgenders as being a kind of large grouping of extraterrestrials that are on some high dimensional plane. And I recall him kind of referring to them as Pleiadians and of that group. Now, I'm not sure exactly to what extent the Greys figure within that kind of Transgenders kind of grouping, but as far as I was aware, it mainly was Pleiadians and that kind of a grouping. So, but I have to find out more about exactly how the Greys figure in.
Yeah, I went to their website and they have a big picture of a Grey, there on the front page, and I just kind of go, whoa, it's like right away, like my little hair on the back of my neck stood up and go, well, I'm really hoping that he is working with these higher beings, and from what I understand, well, I would talk about Greys basically. I say it's a real gray area, because some seem to be self-serving or have their own agenda, and some might just be little biological robots. There's all kinds of different agendas happening with these Greys, and so it's just it's so murky when you have the Greys involved. You just don't know what is behind it, or or if the government's involved with it, or what is going on.
Well, absolutely right, James. Now, I'm just at his website now, and I think it's important to point out that Stanley's quite old, and I think he had someone create the website for him, and so maybe it's the webmaster that did that put Greys up there. But I'm at his website now. I'm not seeing pictures of Greys, but just the web design. I would say that's probably more just the webmaster.
Yeah, I hope so.
And then him.
Yeah, there's I know when I did Transgenders, on YouTube, that a big picture of the Greys came up. But anyway, I'm really hoping that's the case. We're getting a lot of information here about that, and basically what I was told was that the more benevolent beings kind of did a preemptive appearance to kind of pull the rug out from under one of the other programs that was